So thank you very much, Dr. Teresa. I'm very happy to be here sharing with you and with all your students and faculty. This about less than 1 hour that I'm going to be here with you. Yes, I do want to be provocative. I want to provoke because as you know, that's my way of living, but it's not only a way of living, it's also something that we need specifically in this topic that we are talking about. And I'm going to explain why specifically in this topic. So thank you very much you, thank you very much the CPPI and Madeline for all this work that you made to allow me being here. So if you please confirm me that you can see my slides. I hope you're seeing my slides right now. Any confirmation, please?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So we're going to talk about these topics, and here you have my email address. Dr. Teresa Salgado can give you my contact details. So I'm more than happy to share with you, not only during this hour. So if you want some collaboration, some discussion, further discussion, I will be more than happy to share with you. Okay, you know better than me these things that I was asked to report. This is the number of the course, and you know that we have 0.75 credits contact hours in the ACPE credit. So first of all, my conflict of interest. As Dr. Teresa Salgado said, I was editor-in-chief of the journal Pharmacy Practice. This was the CPPI website, seminar series website a few days ago. I know that it's modified now, so they changed. I was editor-in-chief of a journal, and that created me some kind of conflict of interest in the topics that I'm going to talk about you. I'm not sure if saying fortunately or unfortunately. Okay, no worries. I'm not anymore an editor-in-chief of Pharmacy Practice. I'm not the editor-in-chief of Pharmacy Practice, so I got rid of some conflict of interest that could have. My only conflict of interest in what I'm going to talk to you is that I'm a pharmacy practice researcher. And obviously, I'm going to be biased because I am a pharmacy practice researcher, like many of you. So this is the outline. I'm going to present you what's scientific publishing, who are the players involved in this scientific publishing thing, what are the problems of this publication process. I'm going to give you a potential solution, some potential solutions. It's with question mark because I'm not sure they work, but I deeply think, I trust that it could be a solution. And then a final, just one slide for wrap-up message. So if we want to talk about scientific publishing, we have to show this slide first of all. 1665, this is a long time ago. These two journals were born practically the same day, just 3 months difference. In fact, the French one, the Journal of Savants, was not a real scientific journal, but since the very beginning, the Philosophical Transactions, that's how we know this second journal here, who was born a few months later than the French one, was a real scientific journal, exactly that we think now scientific journals are. It's funny, I give you some information here that Harry Underwood, the one who was the first editor-in-chief, had to pay for that journal, although it was the journal of the Royal Society of London. He paid himself for the journal. So they published for the first time a collection of scientific papers. That's a scientific journal. I use here a report from one of your national research committees. This is the authorship in biomedical sciences, because they explain quite well, mentioning this Philosophical Transaction journal, what is scientific publishing. The aim of this new publication, they are talking about that 1665 publication, was to create a public record of original contributions to knowledge and to encourage scientists to speak directly to one another. So sharing, I love that thing. By providing intellectual credit publicly for innovative claims in natural philosophy, the journal encouraged scientists to disclose knowledge and they might otherwise that they might otherwise have kept secret. So sharing and sharing knowledge. I love this thing. I mean, this is why I am in this area, because I love disseminating. As Dr. Reza said, my PhD was about drug information. So sharing knowledge is what I want. But I have to say that the same committee, the Authorship and Biological Sciences Committee, said also that this journal, the Philosophical Transaction, created a sense of competition among scientists to be the first to publish. So this is not only sharing thing, it's beating. I want to be the first one. If the journal where you publish is a prominent one, they say, publication endows the author with an extra measure of prestige. So it's not only sharing knowledge, it's also beating the others. So this situation where we have a balance between beating the others and disseminating knowledge is scientific publishing. And I would love having this balance really balanced. Well, no, that's not true. I would love having more weight on the disseminating knowledge played than in the beating the others. But at least I will have to have a kind of balance between these two things. Let's see if this happens or not. Okay, who are the players involved in this scientific publishing process or system? Well, first of all of you, me, myself, are authors of papers. Then we write a paper, and the first thing we do when we have finished the paper is submitting the paper to a journal. The journal has a journal editor who is the boss around there, who is the one who runs the journal. This journal editor asks collaboration for assessing that paper. That manuscript is not a paper yet, it's a manuscript, although it's not written by hand. We call that manuscript, to an external peer reviewer. The external peer reviewer comments on this manuscript and give it back, send it back to the journal editor. The journal editor send it back to the author. The author send a new version to the journal editor, and you can go on and on and on 3-4 times trying to improve this manuscript. At the end of this process, as you all know, the journal editor accepts the paper and publish the paper. So we have another player, as the reader, someone who is going to read the paper and use it for whatever he or she wants. So I could say that these are the 4 main players in the editorial process, just 4 people. Oh, it's quite simple. So this is not a very complicated system, so we can run this without any problem. In fact, this is not true, because are there 4 different players? Let's see. Who are the authors? Authors are researchers in the area interested in reporting findings. Okay. Who are the editors? The editors are researchers in the area interested in publishing scientific journals. And who are peer reviewers? Are researchers in the area interested in contributing to others' papers. And who are the readers? Readers are researchers in the area interested in receiving that scientific knowledge. So at the end of the day, we do not have 4 different players. At the end of the day, we have one group of people playing 4 different roles. And this is quite important because of something that I'm going to discuss with you during this presentation. But keep in mind, we have one group of people playing 4 different roles. All of us play 4 roles in the same system. Okay. Well, it's not moving. Okay. So these are the 4 players, and we're going to analyze what they Sorry. I forgot of the proof editors. Proof editors is the people that we format the papers, is not publishing Word. So we have to format them. This is the people that take care of that. Well, also, sorry, I forgot also of the publishing corporation that publishes the journal. The journal is not published by individuals, it's published by a yes, and I forgot also about the indexer. And journals and articles are indexed in databases, and we need indexes and we need catalogers. There are two different groups of people working in bibliographic databases. But we have also, the repository staff. The repository staff is the people that stores these papers to have access from everywhere in the PDFs that you know. And as we are now in open science, we have also some people that we call data depositing staff that take care of the data that you have yes, and the academic institutions, sorry, I forgot of them also. We have academic institutions that use your papers for their prestige and use your papers for getting funds, and obviously from funders. These funders that I have also forgotten also evaluate your papers and evaluate the journals, and based on this group of people that we call them metric staff, they create metrics to kind of making this objective. And then we have also the institution rankers. Sorry, I forgot also about this group of people. These institution rankers are those that create the ranking of the universities and the ranking of the colleges, all these things. And the whistleblowers, oh yes, I've forgotten of this group of people, very interesting group of people that scrutinize the papers written by others, trying to identify frauds and report the fraud. And well, obviously the copyright clearances, because we have papers published with copyrights, and we need this kind of people, and so on and on and on. So do you remember those 4 blue people? In fact, just one blue people with 4 different roles. Okay, these orange people, let's call these orange people, have hidden. And this is not only in this slide. I would love that this was restricted to this slide. This is what really happened in the publication system. These orange people take the control of the publication system. Instead of those 4 initial roles played by just one group of people, now we have all these orange people taking control of this. There are a couple of differences between the blue people and the orange people. Usually the blue people work for the sake of disseminating knowledge, although we know that they also want to beat each other. Okay. But the most important, they usually work for free. They get their money from other businesses, other salaries, other sources, and work in this as a secondary area. But the orange people work in this business because they want to make money. And I have nothing against business, please. For sure, I have nothing against business. I love to earn money, as I hope you all. But when these people take the control with a very business-oriented way of running, all the system changed. And that's what I'm going to show you, because what is the problem of, well, it's not a problem. We call now about a scholarly publishing crisis, because everyone is complaining about the system. And let's think about these 4 roles, or these 4 people. In fact, it's just one people. They are always complaining about many things. When you talk to authors, we all are authors, they complain about a too long editorial process, too much desk rejection. As you know, desk rejection is when the process doesn't start, when the author submit the paper to the journal, and the journal editor says, I'm not interested in this paper, I just reject it without going through the peer review process. The authors also complain, we all complain, and I have a lot of examples, personal examples about this, about the bad peer reviewers that we had been assigned and the poor comments they produce. We complain about authors, complain about low impact factors the journals have, and the too high APCs. I'm not going to enter in this topic during this presentation because it deserves a different presentation. Peer reviewers complain also. They complain about the too many invitations they receive to review papers and about the poor quality of the manuscripts they receive. Editors also complain about the poor quality of the manuscripts. They complain that they have very few peer reviewers accepting invitations. They complain about many authors complaining. It's funny because editors complain about being constantly massacred by the complaints about the editorial process duration from authors. And they also complain about the low impact factors. And finally, readers complain about poor quality articles and about a very funny thing, which is their article has not cited my previous article. So as you see, the four main players are complaining, but I would like you to remember there are not four players. It's just one player playing four roles. So it's very funny, it's very strange seeing the people complaining about themselves when they play the other role. It's funny, keep that in mind, please. Okay, let's analyze some of these complaints and see if we have solutions for these complaints. First of all, this is not me, although I fully agree with these people, we publish too much. Let's say it again, we publish too much. Please, without turning on the micro, please say, all of you, we publish too much. We all publish too much. This is a group of the Stanford University that I respect a lot, directed by Professor Ioannidis, and they assess what they call the waste in biomedical research and in literature production. A figure they gave us, 5% of the US healthcare expenditure is devoted to research, which is not a small amount. Obviously, we would like to increase that. I would love to increase that, but we have to think that 5% of the healthcare expenditure in the country that spends more money in healthcare is assigned to biomedical research. I don't want to reduce biomedical research. What I would like to reduce is this other paper from this professor from Stanford. I would like to reduce the mass production of redundant, misleading, and conflicted. In this case, the analysis was about systematic reviews and meta-analysis, but let's forget of systematic review and meta-analysis. I would like to reduce the mass production of redundant, misleading, and conflicting papers. I would love to reduce that. Data they provided in this analysis, 20%, thank God, are never published of this systematic review and meta-analysis. They will never get published. 27% are redundant and completely unnecessary. 17% are decent. They mean they are correctly performed, but are completely useless. They are correctly performed, but are useless. 13% are misleading, and this is critical. 20% are flawed beyond repair, so it's pure rubbish. And at the end of the day, we have just 3% of systematic reviews and meta-analysis, decent and clinically useful. 3%. I think this is scary. We should think of it. Only 3% of the systematic review and meta-analysis that we have published are decent and useful. Why do we publish so much? Okay, because we have unbalanced. The balance is not anymore a balance. We want to beat the others, much more than we want to disseminate knowledge. We have here a very interesting paper. I would like you to see, first of all, the date of the paper. It's not a new paper. It's a very old paper, more than about 60 years old paper. And says, today, 60 years ago, There's much being written in the various scientific fields by researchers who must, think of the verb, must publish or perish. It's terrific. 60 years ago, they recognized that we were publishing too much. In order to receive grants or promotion, it's necessary to keep their names in print over articles. So we just publish because we want to beat others and get funding and get promotions and get PhDs and get, it's not because we are disseminating knowledge. That's very sad. My thinking is very sad. I'm going to put just an example from the university I got my PhD. They make mandatory to publish at least one paper to be able to defend your thesis. This is not really 100% true, because it's one paper if that paper is in a first quartile journal. If it's not, you have to publish 3 papers. So every single PhD student has to publish 3 papers to be able to present the thesis. I don't have any data here in this slide, but I work very much with a university in Brazil that I have to acknowledge their collaboration, and I'm very happy with that collaboration. In that university, which is the Federal University of Paraná in Brazil, they make mandatory to submit a thesis, to submit a paper for defending a master thesis. So every single master student in their university has to submit a paper. That's too much. But it's not only students. This is for academics, for faculty. We measure our performance using different indexes. This is the H index, the Hirsch index calculation. And in order to have a higher H index, the better that you can do is publish a lot. Not publish good things. Obviously, if they are good, it's better. But it's important to publish a lot of them. I'm not going to enter in the details of how the H index is calculated, but if you have just 3 papers published, the maximum H index you can have is 3. But if you have 100 papers, you have chances to have more than 4 papers cited, at least 4 papers, so your index is 4. So the more, the better. And it should not be like this. We usually use citations, the number of times that a paper was cited, an author was cited, a journal is cited, as a quality surrogate measure of quality. Sorry. Let me put to you here an example that we are working in, demonstrating. We can use a lot of different examples. I'm going to use just one to demonstrate that this metric of citations is not a good idea. And we are making this research now. This is the case study of Lancet Respiratory Medicine. It's, in my opinion, a good respiratory journal. And this is the time, the top 10 papers, cited papers in 2020 have 160, 100, 100, about 100 citations each. This is the top 10 cited papers in 2020, published in 19 and 18. You will know in a few minutes why I selected these years and all these things. So remember, 100 and something citations in average. Okay. In March 11 last year, they published a correspondence, a letter, Lancet loves letters, about patients with hypertension and diabetes and their increased risk of COVID infection. We were working in my lab in this topic, and when we have this paper, we have alerts, and we have the paper the same day that it's published. We realize it's a very short paper, that they make 2 huge mistakes in these papers. For all of you that have some background in epidemiology, they have not adjusted for age. And if you are talking about diabetes and hypertension and you do not adjust for age, your calculations are completely wrong. And the second one, and I mean, moved to a pharmacology lab. So pharmacology is very important in my lab, as you can imagine. And they made a mistake about the role of the renin-angiotensin axis in the risk they were assessing. So we know more people that wrote a letter trying to say, sorry, this is wrong. But the Lancet Respiratory Medicine just declined any publication of these letters that explained that they were completely wrong. This was so crucial in COVID and in cardiovascular diseases that only 2 days later, this is just March 11, March 13, the European Society of Cardiology had to make an urgent position saying that this paper was completely useless and please do not pay attention to that paper. Only 2 days later, they alerted about this irrelevant paper, misleading paper, and dangerous paper. Okay, in my opinion, this paper should have never been published, and if published, should have been retracted. Why they did not retract this paper? Because in less than 1 year, this paper has been cited 1,217 and 76 times. These data were obtained in 5 days ago, or 3 days ago. So remember, they have an average citation of 100 last year, and this paper that should have never been published has 1,200. So I don't like using the citation as a metric because we are awarding this paper that should have never been published or that should have been retracted after publishing. So just to close this first area of we publish too much, to our academic institutions, I would ask them to create metrics to assess the performance of their students and the performance of their academics and faculty. I don't like the idea that the universities, institutions use a metric used for another system, the publication system, to assess their students. So universities should create their own assessment system. And just to give you an idea, some institutions are now ignoring all the metrics and asking the researchers to provide the best 5 papers they produce in the last 5 years. You choose the best 5 papers you produce in the last 5 years, and that gives me a picture of what you are doing now. So I have to recognize that I'm not giving you a solution because these solutions are mainly associated to university policymakers and to funders and all these things. And I'm interested in giving you solutions, students, faculty, people that usually have to research and publish. One of the solutions that I would always provide and I will always reinforce is collaboration. Instead of publishing too many bad papers, why don't we publish less good papers? Collaboration is not the solution, but it's a contribution. And we collaborate in this area, in this pharmacy practice area, we collaborate very low, nothing, I would say nothing. This is a study that we published in 2020. It's a real international collaboration paper, Saudi Arabia, Brazil, Saudi Arabia, and Portugal, and measures the percentage of international collaboration per country and the Human Development Index, how developed is that country. So you see that highly developed countries have about 60%. These are some European, Europe is highlighted in this light blue, some European countries that are usually, they work together, not only in research, they are like in some states in Europe, there are small countries that work very much together, so it's not a merit. Big European countries are here or here, Australia and Canada are here. We are talking about 30 to 50% of the papers as an international collaboration. Have you seen this purple big circle here? Can you see what country is this? less than 10% of the papers were in international collaboration. So my solution, my suggestion should be publish less, publish better. And collaboration, international collaboration, can provide some of these solutions. Okay, let's move forward to some of the, sorry?
We have a question just really quickly on the paper that was cited on one of your previous slides. Is there information on the sentiment of the citations of that particular?
Sorry, say again, I have your trembling voice now.
Sorry. Vasco Pontina in the chat asked, is there information on the sentiment of the citations of that particular paper?
There's information on it. Oh no, but we don't measure the sentiment of the citations. We just measure if it was cited or not. And I'm pretty sure that the vast majority of these 1,200 citations that paper had were criticized in the paper, but they count. They count. So as citations. I hope I have answered your question. Let's move a bit forward, and if you want, we can have all the questions at the end, because I'm going to provoke a bit more, and now they are going to be more focused on you, these provocative statements I'm going to say. So if you authors usually complain about a too long editorial process. Okay, let's see what this editorial process means. Why this not happen? Okay, we go to a Nature. Nature is a sensationalist journal. It is. They love these sensationalist papers. Look at the title of this, The Waiting Game, and they put a full page. This is a page of Nature with a skeleton handling a paper in the hand, looking to a clock. So quite sensationalist. Okay, but if you see the data they provide, we are about 100 days from submission to acceptance. So this means that about 100 days was devoted to all this process of going, coming back, going back, coming. All this process was done in about 100 days. In my opinion, 100 days is not a huge amount of time in scientific publishing. We made this analysis comparing the publication delay in pharmacy practice compared to a random selection of more than 100,000 papers in PubMed. And we demonstrated that we are about the same delay. So there are not big differences between pharmacy and a random selection of papers in PubMed. And we are about 100 days. So the same that Nature stated in that sensationalist paper. But let me say something. We are talking about this piece of what we call acceptance lag, the time from submission to acceptance. So the time we all perform this process. Is this relevant? Okay, we made a different analysis that we published a few days ago, about 2 weeks ago. We published this other analysis. And this is analysis for network meta-analysis, a kind of meta-analysis, a type of meta-analysis. And we analyze here the time since the authors perform the systematic search. As you know, meta-analysis is something that you perform a systematic search, extract and synthesize the data, and then you start publishing the paper. Okay, so think of something. Researchers devoted 200 days, about 200 days from the search to submission, and then complain about just 100 days, 50% of that time, 100 days of scrutinizing their work. That's not fair. So they are allowed to have 200 days delay the publication, but the editor cannot have 100 days. I think they are a bit exaggerating when they complain. We all exaggerate when we complain about slow returns or slow publication process. It's not so slow. Sorry. And some people invented a solution. And I say some people because I have to say that I'm completely, strongly against this solution. Sorry. Perhaps you heard about what a preprint is. A preprint is a manuscript similar that you create to submit to a journal that is never submitted to a journal and is never peer-reviewed. So at the end of the day, a preprint thing is going from here to here without all the editorial process. Okay, that's a very good idea. So we get rid of all these things here and we publish, and the people has availability, has this preprint available since the very first day. If you see the rate, the slope of increased production of preprints is huge during COVID. It's similar to the total number of papers. So preprints are presented as the solution to this slow editorial process. This is a blog from Anna Clemens that presents 7 benefits of publishing preprints. Let's see these 7 benefits. You are likely to receive higher citation counts. You receive more exposure with a preprint. Your work sees the world quicker. Your article may improve. I don't know how, but they say that. It's a place for unpublishable data. Sorry, if it's unpublishable data, should remain unpublishable, probably. You can publish your research with open access for free. That's not true. Some preprint servers charge to publish preprints. And your work gets published when you are still excited about it. Sorry, let me say something, and I have to become a bit serious now. 100 days. So is your work, how can I say without being rude, so bad, let's say that you cannot be excited with your work for 100 days? So you get unexcited about 5 days later than producing the work? So please throw it to the rubbish. That's trash. But what's important in this blog? Have you seen that we are talking about you all the time? And what about the knowledge, this dissemination of the knowledge? So we publish preprints. I don't like saying publish. We upload preprints. We don't publish them just to beat the others. It's the only reason that we publish preprints. Just because I want to beat the others. I'm not interested in preprints. But I'm not interested in preprints because we have all these things. Why do I need a preprint server? I have a Facebook. I have Facebook and I use Facebook as a preprint. I want to say something that I have in my mind right now and I put a Facebook post. And many people comment on my Facebook post. Is that what we have with preprints? Because remember, we don't have peer review with the preprints. Many people said, oh, but preprints are working for physicists for many years. And that's true, and it's absolutely true. This is the site of probably the most prestigious preprint server. But look at the people that are invited to submit: physics, maths, computer science. I don't know why they include here quantitative biology, quantitative finance, statistics, electrical engineer, and systems science, and economics. What do these people have in common? These people, specifically physicists and mathematicians, they usually create knowledge, create theories based on a guess. Probably you know all better than me that sitcom that I love. It's Big Bang Theory, and you probably know my friend Sheldon Cooper like this. He's thinking of an idea and have a guess, and then do the math to demonstrate that theory. So for these people that work upon guesses, sharing the guesses can be useful. I agree, I fully agree. But let me say something. Would you ask you something? Would you base a clinical decision on a guess? Would you create evidence about a drug or an intervention, clinical intervention, upon a guess? I would not. I clearly would not. What happens when you do that? This is an example of a myriad of examples I could show you. This is a preprint about the association of myopericarditis and vaccination, COVID vaccines. They reported whatever they reported, but they finally withdraw this preprint. And look at the reason they provide. In summary, the authors have withdrawn this manuscript because of a major error pertaining to the quoted incidence data. That's exactly what we want to avoid with peer review. Peer review is based on what we call the Linus Law that was created by this hacker, Eric Raymond, and said, given enough A-balls, our bags are shallow. And that's what we're going to do with this process around here. So please do not kill that process. Instead of killing that process, why don't we reinforce the peer review process? How can we, and I'm talking about we, you and me, not the politicians like the other. How can we? Okay, obviously, not attending to this kind of papers, also a sensationalist paper published in the Nature. Why I say no to peer review this summer? Okay, obviously you are free and you can say no to peer review whenever you want. But the reason that you gave me is not a good one. I no longer feel I have a moral obligation to peer review during my time off, especially if someone like me, a 20 years editor, sees this statement, because we know that many of you use your holidays, your vacation, to finish papers that you have in the middle, or so you can do that for your papers, but you cannot review papers from others. That's a kind of selfish. I mean, this is published in an editorial that I have the honor to publish with your Dr. Teresa Salgado, and was this came from actual justifications of invitations declined. The people that decline invitations to review in the journal that we edited. I'm at the end of the semester. I'm about to go on vacation. I'm on vacation. I've just returned from vacation. I'm at the beginning of the semester. So let us think. A semester usually has 6 months. At least here in Europe, we have a semester of 6 months. You go on vacation 1 month, and you have about 1 month and a half before and 1 month and a half after that you cannot review. So this makes 3-4 months in a semester that you cannot review. So when are you available for reviewing papers? So in 6, you're not available in 5. And it's even worse than that, because in the middle of the other 2, you have assignments, you are buried on things, and you have a lot of things. So this way of thinking is what is a problem with peer review, and this is delaying your papers. And we did the math about how many papers you should review to keep the wheel spinning. And with a simple mathematics, we are not good mathematicians, and with simple maths, we realized that the number of papers you should, the number of reviewers per paper published is not related with the number of papers published. It's related with the number of reviewers that you want to assign to each paper and the rejection rate of the paper, of the journal. So let me put an example in plain English. 80% of rejection rate is quite normal in biomedical sciences. And 3 reviewers per manuscript is quite normal in biomedical sciences. So if your research team want to publish 1 paper, using this formula, they should review 15 papers. Or let me say in a different way, If your research team, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about the whole research team, want to publish 10 papers per year, they should review 150 papers. That's the math. Do we review so much? Okay, let's go for the last one of these pieces of problems that we complain, low impact factors. Everyone complains about, the authors complain about low impact factors, the editors complain about the low impact factors, and the readers complain about not having cited their previous, which is the same thing. Just to clarify, what the impact factor is. Well, I'm pretty sure that you all heard about impact factor many times, but I'm pretty sure that not all of you know how impact factor is calculated. And it's very important to know how it is calculated, because we will never beat the people that love the impact factor. I would love to beat them, but we will never beat them. So we have to use their metric. We have to learn from how this metric is calculated to understand and to improve our area. So very simple. Impact factor is calculated every year, and it's presented approximately in June the next year. So in June this year, in June 2021, we got the impact factor from 2020. And the impact factor of 2020 is calculated by papers published in 2020. Be aware of the years because it's a bit tricky. So papers published in 2020, citing articles from the 2 previous years over the articles published by the journal in these 2 previous years. So it has to be papers published in 2020. Okay. I have to make a personal disclaimer at this point. I'm a fully supporter of what we call Dora Declaration, the Declaration of Research Assessment, or the Declaration of San Francisco. This declaration has just one general recommendation, only one. So it's not so difficult to learn from the general recommendations. It's only one. Do not use journal-based metrics such as journal impact factors as a surrogate measurement to assess the quality of individual research articles, or to assess individual scientists' contributions, or in hiring, promotion, or funding decisions. There are many studies, and we could devote another lecture like this to discuss the impact factor. But just one thing that I'm going to say. Let's imagine that the impact factor works. Doesn't work at all. But let's imagine it works. It measures the quality. It would measure, if it works, the quality of the journal, not the quality of the single paper, every single paper of the journal. In an issue of a journal, you have about 20 papers or more. From those 20 papers, you have very good papers and absolutely poor papers. So if we assign the same metric to the best paper in that issue and to the worst paper in that issue, that's not assessing the quality of the paper or the researcher. Okay, but let me show you a solution for this problem of low impact factors. First of all, do we have low impact factors in pharmacy? You have to check this. This is another research we performed assessing, and we made a map of all the pharmacy journals. I have not said pharmacy practice journals because pharmacy practice is one of these categories here. We made a hierarchy cluster analysis and a correspondence analysis of all the journals in pharmacy. These things that you can see here are journals and the title of journals. So in this hierarchy cluster analysis, we found 6 categories: cell pharmacology and molecular pharmacology, these 2, pharmaceutics and pharmaceutical analysis, these 2, and the 2 more related to us, pharmacy practice and clinical pharmacology. As you can see, we have 67 journals in pharmacy practice, which are a lot of them. I wouldn't say before this research that we will have 67 journals in our area. But when we see the impact factors of these journals, we see that from our 67 journals, only 10 have impact factor. If you see, it's the lowest percentage in all the 6 categories. So we can say that very few journals in pharmacy practice have impact factor. And when you see the impact factors, the median is one of the lowest, together with pharmaceutical analysis. So the median in the interquartile range is lower than the median in many cases. So yes, we have to say, yes, we have really low impact factors in pharmacy practice. And that's something that came from the moon, or can we contribute to improve these impact factors? So as I told you, the impact factor is a calculation. It's a very simple quotient, and you cannot do anything with this figure here because it's the number of papers published, but this depends on you. Simply, this is the math for the JAMA impact factor. So we have, as I told you, 10 journals in pharmacy practice with impact factor. Here are the impact factors: 2 point, 2 point, 1 point, 2 point, 2 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point. I have to say that this is an outlier because it's not a pure pharmacy practice journal, no? And this is a Japanese written journal, so they got a much lower impact factor. So these are the 10 pharmacy practice impact factor. When you compare these 2 point, 3 point with the Lancet 79, New England 91, or JAMA 56, these are ridiculous. These are absolutely low impact factors. But where can you, or how can you collaborate with this impact factor? Or the question is, can you increase the impact factor of this journal? For instance, the American Journal of Physicians and Pharmacists. Every time you cite a paper of the last 2 years of this journal, you would increase 0.0, so 3 millésimos this thing. It's just 3 with 2 zeros. Yes, but we are here almost 30 people. If we all publish one paper citing one article published in American Journal of Physicians and Pharmacists, we would increase this by 90. One paper. And what about if we publish 2 papers a year and cite, so it would be 180. So we are a very reduced number of people. We are not all the pharmacy practice researchers in the world. If we take care of these journals and think that they should be our main area journals to cite, we would increase them. But we prefer to do differently. We love citing these journals because of what we call the Matthew effect. In fact, because we think that if I have a very bad paper, I want to publish a very bad paper from me, but if I cite, if I put references from Lancet, from New England, and from JAMA, I think that my paper improves. And I have to say something. Your paper doesn't improve at all because you cite Lancet, New England, and JAMA. Your paper was bad, it is bad, and now cites good journals. So citing these journals, the Matthew effect is something that probably you heard about. It's St. Matthew in the Bible reported that the poor becomes poorer and the rich becomes richer. And that's what happens when we select this as main target of our citations. So I'm not trying you to cheat on the citations. I will never promote cheating on the citations. I promise you, I'm not promoting cheating on the citations. You have the right to choose. You are absolutely free to choose. But as everywhere, the right to choose goes together with the responsibility to choose carefully. Up to you, but just have this in mind, please. And not only that 10 papers, that 10 journals. As I told you, we have 67 journals, 10 of them have impact factor assigned, 57 of them have no impact factor assigned, because Clarivate, the one who creates the impact factor, says that they don't get enough number of citations. So just a question that I made to you, that I asked you, shouldn't we invest in these journals? These are journals from our area. Because I'm going to the last slide. If I improve the citation, if I improve the impact factor of these papers, what are my chances of publishing in these journals? Well, I would say quite high. I have papers published in majority of these journals. What are the chances of publishing in these? 3. I just have one paper published in my life in Lancet, and no one in New England, and no one in JAMA. So if I improve these impact factors, I will be benefit of this. And if I improve and I get these journals promoted into the impact factor calculations, I will be the beneficiary of that. So just to finish, because I think I'm out of time. Yes, I'm absolutely out of time. The wrap-up message. We wrote this editorial talking about what is expected from each player in this collaborative publishing thing. That is what I would support the rest of my life. The more manuscript you agree to review, the faster you'll have your own manuscript published. Keep that in mind, please. The more trust you put into the system, the more trust you will have to consume. And finally, the more you take care of your scientific area, the more your scientific area will take care of you. Thank you very much. I'm willing to have a lot of questions.
Thank you so much for that great presentation. Does anyone have any questions? I know I saw a couple comments in the chat. If anyone wants to elaborate on those, feel free to unmute and do so.
I'm going to open.
I had a.
Oh, sorry. Go.
Hi, Fernando. This is Shanaka, and thanks for that amazing presentation. A lot of that resonated with what I keep thinking about, publications and all of that. But I was wondering, so open source software actually created a solution for this, I think. If you look at something like GitHub, where people write code, and if that code is of interest, then others fork it and improve on it, and then they merge the results back together with the code later on. And I always wondered, why can't we do something like that with science? Because we don't have to then wait until our research is complete. The data that we generate actually has a record there, and if it has value, other people will fork it and work on it, and then you can merge, and you kind of go from this static one paper at a time to a more dynamic, continuous work type of scientific publication. And I always wondered why we can't do that in scientific journals.
Thank you very much for your question. GitHub is a kind of preprint server. So it's what I'm completely against. Sorry to say this in this form, in this way. I'm completely against because of something. We are researchers, and we should use our brain, our neurons to create knowledge. But what is this knowledge for in our area? It's usually what we create with this knowledge are clinical decisions. And who is making these clinical decisions? Usually clinicians in different areas of healthcare that do not devote their time to research. They don't want to research. I don't want them to research. I want to be the best clinician, especially when I go to them with a pain or with something. I want them to make the best decision ever in my health. So I don't want them to make decisions based on guesses. And you and me, researchers, can guess things and discuss and go to a conference and discuss in the conference, why don't we put this up, down, or down, up, or whatever. And we can discuss a lot of things. And then we have to create a piece of very robust knowledge for one of these clinicians to care of patients.
I see.
That's the difference. That's why physicists can publish these preprints, because they are, sorry, do you know any physicist? I hope you don't. Don't tell what I'm going to say, because they don't do important things like us. We care for people. They just invent the neutrons and all these things that nobody have ever seen in their life. But they can guess things. We cannot guess. We are not allowed to guess. Our patient's life is in our hands, or in the hands of the people that we teach and we research for. So be very careful.
I have a bunch of questions, but I'm going to let somebody else ask questions, but I would love to continue the discussion with you later.
Okay. Anyone else?
We're getting a lot of thanks in the chat. I'm not sure if you have it open, but
Can you help me with the chat? Because if I see the cameras, I miss the chat. So can you help me, Madeline?
Yes, if there are questions in the chat, but right now there's just several people who have said thank you who had to hop off. So I just wanted to let you know that your presentation was appreciated.
Oh, thank you very much.
Maybe I can ask one more then. So
Okay.
This about impact factor of pharmacy journals. Can we make a correction to that actual impact factor calculation in a way that it reflects the impact to the profession? So there aren't that many pharmacy journals, there aren't that many pharmacy publications coming up. So I feel that there must be a correction factor that needs to be added in there.
Okay, we have a lot of corrections to metrics in general. First of all, we should think what the metric measures. That's the first thing that we do when we create a metric. For instance, when we talk about impact factor and all these measures, we usually measure the impact, that's what they call the impact factor, the impact of science on science. So that's the idea of impact factor. You have in the VCU, you have Dr. Dave Dixon, who has been working with altmetrics, which are a different kind of metrics that measure the impact of science on social media. So it's not science on science, it's science on social media. And I have a friend in Brazil that is working, I have never worked in that, and it's very complicated, measuring the impact of science on healthcare. I would love to have a good metric for that because it's the real metric that I would like to have. It's very complicated. It's really complicated. But correcting the metrics, let's talk about the impact factor. It's something that many people try to do. And as any math artifact that you make in a distribution, you improve something and you destroy something about that distribution. So it's not easy to make an artifact with a distribution. What we should do really when we use metrics is comparing among similars. It's completely useless comparing the impact factors of pharmacy practice with genetics, because the best paper, the best journal in pharmacy practice has a 3.3, which is a very bad impact factor in genetics. So we cannot compare and watch different areas. That's why we are claiming, and we published that paper I have not mentioned in my presentation, we are claiming to have a more accurate subject category, which is pharmacy. We have now pharmacology and pharmacy, which is nothing, it's pharmacology and pharmacy. And we would like to have a category called pharmacy, not pharmacology and pharmacy. But remember of Dora Declaration, metrics are what they are intended to be. And impact factor is not to assess individuals, it's to assess journals, which is not individuals. So, Madeline, were you talking?
Oh, I sighed. I thought that was interesting, your answer. I'm seeing in the chat here from Erica Brody, journal citation reports found in Web of Science this year introduced a new impact factor called journal citation indicator, which is intended to normalize these numbers across the plan.
I have nothing against, it's not true, I'm lying now. I have nothing against impact factor people. I would say I have a few things against them, but they have realized that the people is reacting against the impact factor because of the many things that we have not explained here, and we can do a different seminar criticizing or analyzing the impact factor and the metric itself. So as they know there's a big movement now in the world against the impact factor because it's not a good metric, they created this new metric. If you see when they explain how this new metric is calculated, is created, it's not clear. I work in this area for years. I'm not able to say you how this metric is calculated. And that's a problem, because I know very well how the impact factor is calculated. This metric, they state that it's a very complicated metric that requires a lot of computer resources to calculate, but they don't explain how this metric is calculated. So the first thing I need is to know exactly how the metric is calculated. And then I will analyze the metric. But at the end of the day, please remember, this is a journal-based metric. And in a journal, we have very good papers and very bad papers in the same issue of the journal. So a journal-based metric will never assess the quality of one individual researcher or one individual paper. That's something that the Declaration of San Francisco, I'm a 49er, remember. So I support the Declaration of San Francisco.
She added she's not a proponent of impact factors. She was just sharing. That was just an FYI. But if there are no other questions, I think that we've definitely gone over time. So thank you all for holding on here. And thank you, Dr. Fernandez-Llimos, for your presentation.
My pleasure.
I believe that's all from us today. So thank you all for being here.
Pleasure.